Hello and welcome to episode 795 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of a Justin Fields for president kind of week. Yes, that's right. I was honestly, really, truly struck by the way Justin Fields handled his benching last week. Yeah, he wasn't throwing the ball great. The team was still 4-2 because he's managed games well. He's used his legs well. He made some big plays. And it's not like Dan Marino or Joe Montana was behind him and healthy and ready to play. I mean, we're talking about Russell fucking Wilson here, 35 years old Russell Wilson. Anyways, Fields gets benched. Maybe not the move that I would have made if I was in charge. I thought Fields probably had a right to be pissed or at least tilted. But instead, he was asked about it, and here's what Justin Fields said when asked, "Are you frustrated with the decision by Mike Tomlin to start Russ Wilson in week 7?" And Fields said, and I quote, "I don't think I've played good enough, if I'm being real with you. If I'm being real with myself, I think if I did play well enough, there wouldn't be any sort of who should be playing, who should not. We got a few wins. Of course, I'm glad about that, but there are areas I could be better at." Yeah, it seems like nothing, seems like a throwaway line, but in today's society, which increasingly and severely, in my opinion, lacks personal responsibility, I was honestly floored and so impressed with Justin Fields' response. I mean, when I get to the ballot box come November for the election, I'm writing in Justin Fields for president. This is exactly what we need as a society. It's not some, oh, this is bullshit, man. I'm 4-2 as a starter. It's not, I've played poorly because Arthur Smith is adult, or this is George Pickens' fault. He doesn't even run all the routes, or you gave me Van Jefferson as my wide receiver too, or offensive line, or whatever, It was just no excuses. Play like a fucking champion. Justin Fields said, I didn't play well enough. I need to accept the consequences. So anyway, shout out to you, Justin Fields. You're getting one write-in vote from me in the election. I allow all of you to do the same as long as you're not writing in Silva Levitan 2024. Which brings me to the week 7 slate. I could sit here and bitch and moan. I could say I had Jaden Daniels in cash on both sites. He left in the first quarter, didn't come back. I had Jordan Whittington on both sites in cash, had Juju on DK. I could make excuses. Or I could take this great example from our 47th president, Justin Fields, take the words from the great David Goggins, and just stop being a bitch. I played bad. Real bad. I mean, somehow still won on FanDuel, but absolutely deserved to get punished on DraftKings. No one's fault but my own. Just played terrible. So yeah, easily one of the most frustrating slates I can remember. For tournaments, I was actually winning the 250 on FanDuel, the $250 buy-in on FanDuel for $1 million about halfway, like 3/4 of the way through the 1 p.m. games. I was thinking at that point, like, man, how can I hold on and win here? And I think I figured out that the only way I actually could have held on and won the million was some kind of worldwide or countrywide disaster that immediately halted and canceled every game. So I started going down that path. And I thought, well, if that happened, if there was really a worldwide or a nationwide disaster that halted every game, well, it's likely GG for society as a whole at that point, and money wouldn't do much good anyways. So yeah, there was no path there. The team I really liked, it was a Kirk Cousins double with DK Metcalf bring back, Devon Achane and Dolphins defense correlation, Aaron Jones and Jahmyr Gibbs, mini correlation, David Njoku at tight end. I thought that Atlanta-Seattle game was really going to get nuts late and give me a chance. But then Drake London had a pass just clang right off his hands for an interception. DK Metcalf gets hurt. He lands on just 99 yards instead of getting the 100-yard bonus. And it was Jover. So, yeah. I know a big story from week 7 was all the questionable tag stuff. Just wanted to take a minute to talk about that. First of all, it's really hard to parse in the NFL who is just listed questionable, but they're fine. Who's legit questionable because they might not play. Who's listed questionable because they'll play but could be limited. Who's listed questionable, but there's a big risk of aggravation, even if they play. I mean, what I do know is that our data side team looked at all our historical projections versus actual results and found that one of our bigger leaks was we were over projecting players who were listed questionable for games. Basically, if a guy was questionable but active, we often had him projected as if he was 99 or 98 or 100% healthy because we really had no way to know. This year, we've made a change. It's not uniform across the board for all positions. We still have room to manually override, but we do have small docs on guys who have questionable tags. But just a few examples from the last few weeks that come to mind that make this so hard. I mean, Deontay Johnson was listed questionable a couple of times over the last month, was still projecting really well, even with the Q doc. Tons of people played him in cash, and he smashed. Like, okay, quit Deontay Johnson, played through questionable tag and smashed. Jordan Whittington was listed questionable on Sunday, played just 9 snaps. Juju was listed questionable, barely played with his hamstring. Aaron Jones, on the other hand, was listed questionable with a hamstring/hip thing. He absolutely crushed against the Lions. Brian Robinson was listed questionable. He played well. A couple weeks ago, or maybe I think it was last week, Evan Ingram was questionable. He caught 10 balls. But Adam, Ken Walker, these illnesses, they don't matter. Ken Walker was listed questionable. He was sick. Look, Adam, he just went out and smashed. But Debo suddenly was sick. He was questionable. He misses the whole game. Turns out he has pneumonia. Mike Evans last night, we knew he had a hamstring issue. Bucks didn't even list him questionable. Some teams, I'm sure, would have listed Mike Evans questionable, even though he was playing for sure, and he goes out there, limps around, aggravates. Anyway, I could keep going, but you get the point. My personal lean is to take it on a case-by-case basis. If guys are full in practice all week, but still listed questionable, the reporting on Friday is good, that's probably safe. Probably. If he's a guy is a DNP in practice or limited practice for much of the week, and then a game time decision, I'm more scared. I mean, I've played guys listed questionable tons of times in cash. It's never gone as bad as the Whittington and Juju thing from Sunday. I do think that as a whole, leaning away from guys listed questionable, especially in cash, net, it's probably right. Especially on guys like Jordan Whittington and Juju Smith-Schuster, whose teams don't really need them that badly at all. It's probably right. One last thing on tournaments. I thought the Saquon Barkley ownership showed just how much projections are influencing ownership these days. Saquon was only 11% on FanDuel and 10% on DraftKings, even though such an incredible spot for him in general and all the revenge stuff here. But Saquon, it's really hard to get him to project as well as someone like Kyron or Kenneth Walker or Bijan types because of the rushing touchdown stuff. Jalen Hurts steals so many. We saw it even on Sunday, even in a revenge game where I thought for sure they'd eschew the tush push for Saquon Barkley runs. They still ran 2 tush pushes for touchdowns in that game on Sunday against the Giants. So it's really hard to get Saquon to project about, as some of these other guys. I thought people would IKB at some, but they really didn't. Again, only around 10% owned. So again, I know I've said this a million times before. The biggest edge we can have in DFS tournaments doesn't come from optimizers or sims or software. All that stuff helps. All that stuff helps incrementally for sure. The biggest edge, in my opinion, that we can create for ourselves is simply disagreeing with a player take versus the rest of the market and being right. Now, that's really hard. Our stuff, in my opinion, is super sharp. It's going to be really hard to disagree and also be right. But if we can do that, that's where the real edge is. I thought Saquon Barkley should have been 2 to 3 points higher in this spot just because of this narrative stuff that they would run tush push. I'm sorry, that they would run Saquon at the 1 yard line instead of tush push. And I was wrong. But at least I got it at low ownership, Bottom line, don't let anyone on earth tell you player takes don't matter. They just don't know what they're saying, Hashtag team player takes forever. All right. 2 things from Monday night that I need to quickly address. First, Jameson Williams. Come the fuck on, man. Come the fuck on. I mean, fucking hell. How do you actually get caught for doing performance-enhancing drugs in the NFL? It reminds me so much of the Will Fuller thing. I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago. It just tilted me so hard. I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't know anything. I have no information. But my assumption is that everyone in the goddamn NFL is on performance enhancing drugs. I mean, have you seen these guys? And so to actually get caught, my assumption is you just have to not be trying. It's like getting an underage drinking citation at Penn State or getting a speeding ticket on the Autobahn. How do you actually get caught when everyone is doing it? It's so fucking sick. I mean, unreal. So Jameson's out 2 weeks, just added to the list of wide receivers. Added to the list of good wide receiver picks, just getting skull fucked. And then, second thing, to top the week off, as if it wasn't a bad enough week and year for wide receiver injuries, Mike Evans' hamstring aggravation sounds bad. And Chris Godwin, probably the single mid-range guy that we were highest on versus market preseason in the rankings. Chris Godwin, he's done for the year with a dislocated ankle. You know, throw him in a pile with all the best wide receiver picks. Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, Rashee Rice, Rashid Shaheed, and now Godwin and Evans. You know, not to mention Tyreek Hill and Waddle getting to it. You know, Puka Nakua's barely played. Marquise Brown never played. I mean, I'm not even sure that we can take data from this season seriously. Are there actually any takeaways structurally to have when all the best wide receiver plays, all the best wide receiver picks got hurt? And when the running backs with huge workloads are staying healthy, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, even the older backs like them with injury histories are staying healthy on massive workloads. So all this data that's going to come out about best ball from this season, I don't know, man. I don't know. And you know, maybe I'm just tilted right now, and we'll certainly look into this more in the offseason, but I'm really tempted to throw most of this season out. I mean, I think I'm dead in best ball at this point. My most owned players included Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, Marquise Brown, Godwin, Puka, Kupp. I have 16% Baker Mayfield. That looks toast now. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to say other than keep chanting hashtag positivity in my head all day. Hashtag positivity. It'll make Godwin's ankle come back to life and Nico get healthy. Hashtag positivity, right? Oh, one final point. Yes, running back and wide receiver injury rates historically are pretty close. The reason in best ball, and really most formats, I prefer to spend significant early round capital at wide receiver is for a bunch of reasons. But one that's playing out now is replaceability. When Christian McCaffrey goes down, Jordan Mason goes nuts. When Kenneth Walker missed games, Zach Charbonnet went nuts. I mean, even Trey Sermon had big games in place of Jonathan Taylor. Tank Bigsby taking over for Travis Etienne and smashing. Tyrone Tracy for Devin Singletary. Bucky Irving had huge games. I could go on. Meanwhile, it's like, oh, great. Jalen McMillan's going to play all the snaps now. Yeah, you know, maybe he'll be okay. But it's just so much harder at wide receiver to put up big fantasy numbers. You have to actually be an incredible NFL player. Whereas at running back, most geeks off the street can just step in and produce. So, you know, we'll see how Ricky Pearsall does. But we know Xavier Hutchinson is an airball in place of Nico Collins. We know Justin Watson and Juju are meh at best in place of Rashee Rice. We know Bub Means is dust in place of Olave and Shaheed. We know Jahan Dotson is dust in place of A.J. Brown. We know Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell aren't great in place of Cooper Kupp and Puka. So, yeah, still feel good about my strategy in best ball for the most part. Obviously got a ton wrong, but I suspect wide receiver heavy builds in best ball will work better next year, actually, as we hopefully won't have a crazy outlier injury season at the position again. And people are going to be way more running back thirsty. All right. Need to get to listener questions. But before I do, a couple things. NBA starts tonight. If you want to play NBA DFS, you need our NBA in-season product. If you want to use an optimizer for NBA, you need to add on the solver through the subscribe tab on ETR. If you want to get our player props plays and or see our full stat projections for NBA, you need the weekly ETR NBA player prop sub. For details on all this, head to the NBA tab on establishtheRun.com. Can also listen to the show I did with Dink last week. Also, for anyone interested in NFL props, just like NBA, that is a 1 week only at a time sub. Check it out in the NFL link in the subscribe tab. Try it for a week and cancel at any time. All right. Enough is enough. It is at last time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Question 1 from Hunter the Hungry. He says, have you done the blue chew? I know you probably think, I don't need them. My boners are fine. I'm around your age and my boners are fine too, but these guys bring me back to the good old days, especially when my wife calls on the turn and the river. Blue Chew, I haven't heard that one before, Hunter the Hungry. I'm glad and relieved for you that your boners are fine. But man, what have we become? What have we become, Hunter the Hungry? Most of the questions I get now are about raising kids or hair transplant therapy in Turkey or Viagra. I mean, am I not down bad enough from all these wide receiver injuries? This is what we need to talk about, Hunter. But I've talked about this before. I'll keep this advice short. If a youngish, healthy man were to use the Blue Chew, as Hunter the Hungry says, yes, it's great. But the biggest thing I try to avoid in life is overpromising and under-delivering in all aspects of life. There's just very few things that are worse than overpromising and under-delivering. And so if the expectation becomes your performance on the Blue Chew, if that's the baseline expectation, how do you ever get off of that stuff without under-delivering? You can't. And also, I'd add, you don't want to build up a tolerance to this shit in case you actually really do need it one day to reach the full 3.9 inches. So I hear you, Hunter the Hungry. Like anything in life, moderation is the key, man. Stay safe out there. Question 2 from Mike. He says, I took the kids to see Wild Robot this weekend. There was a scene in the movie that brought me to tears watching this cartoon baby goose grow up and leave its robot mom. Do you have any experience with this? At times, these kids drive me nuts and I need to get my own space. But then I realize they'll eventually grow up and leave home, and it feels so powerful that I need to give them both a giant bear hug. Yeah, of course, Mike, of course. I mean, I was the idiot sitting there at my younger son's preschool graduation, just weeping. I mean, it was actually pretty humiliating. I'm not really sure exactly why, but I think it's sad. It's sad that the kids are growing up. Sad that means that I'm an old and closer to the end, but that's just life. Nothing we can do. I think the more important takeaway, if there is one, Mike, is just the window for kids to be kids and actually be enjoyable to us. It's small, man. I mean, babies aren't for me, like age 0 to 4 or so. I could have done without that. And I don't have teenagers yet. My kids are 6 and 9. But I remember how I was as a teenager, and I've interacted with some teenagers lately. I don't think teenagers are going to be for me either. So the window here for when it's actually great isn't that big. We're talking like age 4 to age 11 or 12, 7 or 8 years. I'm in that window now. It's been amazing. Probably the most content I've been in forever, outside of these wide receiver injuries, of course. But yeah, I think these are like the deathbed theorem years, the years we'll remember most when we're dying. So anyway, nothing we can do about time. Mike remains undefeated. Just trying to live these years with intention and not take it for granted. Question 3 from Fading the Chalk. He says, I want a satellite into the $333 buy-in Wildcat on DraftKings. I researched for an entire week, played with different combos, and airballed. I see the pros maxing 125 entries, and I'm at a mathematical disadvantage. Any advice? It was the only $333 main slate tournament DraftKings offered. Okay, so I see this logic all the time, and I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm honestly confused by it. Why are you at a mathematical disadvantage with one lineup in the 333 just because someone else is putting in 125 lineups? Like, I really don't see how this affects you. Are they more likely to win the tournament? Of course, they have more entries, but they're also in for $41,000 in entry fees. It's not like they're getting 125 entries for free. So I don't see where the mathematical advantage is there. I just really don't follow the logic here, even though it seems to be the prevailing sentiment from the public. Like, so everybody's about like, everybody, on Twitter, it's like the pros. What is a DFS quote unquote pro anyways? It's nothing to be intimidated by. These are normal people. Anyone on earth can do what they do. It's not like playing in the NBA or the NFL. I'll never be able to play basketball like LeBron James or tennis like Rafael Nadal. They were born with gifts that I was not born with. But in DFS, we're all born with a brain and an ability to work hard and study and use tools if we want, I mean, anyone, at least theoretically, could be a pro. And on top of all that, I'd say that maybe the best NFL DFS players have a 10 to 20% edge. One NFL season with a 10 to 20% edge, you could play the whole year at those win rates and still lose for the year easily. There's just so much variance, which if you think you're worse than the pros, if you think you're worse than the field, well, then that's a good thing. And it's a big reason, the variance is a big reason that NFL DFS is so great and so popular. So I don't know, man. I will say that I do think the Wildcat is a tough tournament. Tons of really, really good players in there. Ideally, you try to win tickets to something that's softer, but yeah, I mean, fading the chalk. I don't want to hear this hashtag negativity from you, man. You are just as good as any other virgin with a computer and a brain. Get in there. Don't be intimidated. Play fearless. I just don't get it. All right, last question we're going to do today. Question 4 comes from Matt. He says, I rear-ended my buddy who was driving in the car ahead of me because I was trying to set a DraftKings lineup 15 minutes before kickoff. I spent the rest of the day wallowing in my shame, and I won no money. Where did I go wrong, and how much of a degenerate does this make me? And my first thought, Matt, is that none of this will matter in 10 to 20 years. Everyone, and I mean everyone, will be in a self-driving car, And to me, that's an amazing thing. There are somewhere between 14,000 and 36,000 car crashes every single day in the United States alone, depending on what stat you look at. In 2022, 42,000 people died from motor vehicle crashes in the United States. I mean, that's insane. I mean, so it would be absolutely crazy in my head to not use self-driving for everyone across the board. Keep everyone safe. These idiots drinking and driving, hardos driving 100 miles an hour and weaving through everyone. Just straight up terrible drivers, not impaired, just they can't fucking drive. Or, people like you, Matt, who are texting and driving, grinding lineups and driving. Let's just eliminate all that. I know the self-driving stuff is scary and it's not perfect yet, but we can't let that get in the way of something that will literally save tens of thousands of lives per year. And hopefully less traffic also. But anyways, Matt, I can't tell you, Matt, how many times I've just pulled over on the side of the road to make a change to a lineup. Literally, just get off the road, pull into some random parking lot. People probably think I'm doing drugs or fucking or something cool. But no, I got news that Deebo Samuel is sucking oxygen on the sideline because he's sick 5 minutes before the game. Let me find this Wendy's parking lot real quick and make some changes. So, yeah, it's a good lesson, Matt. Be responsible, do the right thing, embrace your inner virgin, and just pull over. All right. That is going to do it for this week's solo pod. We'll be back later today with Daigle for waiver wire and later tonight with Silva for team by team analysis of week 7. For in-season subscribers, first run of week 8 projections will be out Wednesday night. Myself, Silva, and Wiggins will be on the show Friday night talking every player in every week 8 game. Good luck in the NBA streets tonight for tip-off. For producer Luke, for Jerry, my one true love, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.